Eskom debts are said to have soared to 387 billion rand. That's 221 billion rand, of which was borrowed against government guarantees. This is said to represent almost 3/4 of all government-guaranteed state-owned enterprise borrowing. These details are set out in License to Loot, a book from investigative journalist Stephan Hofstatter. He joins me live from our Parliament studio now. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News. Let's start with a quote that you've attributed to an Eskom manager, telling you that if Eskom had spent 27 billion rand investing in cost-plus mines in 2015, they would have saved 90 billion rand.
Yeah, I mean, that's really, you know, it became a political football because most of these mines were set up about 40 years ago and they had long-term contracts. And the idea was to open up the mining industry to new entrants and to have, you know, empowered mining coal suppliers. And, you know, that was obviously a necessary approach to diversifying the coal supply, but the problem was that you know, Eskom was obliged to invest in these traditionally tied mines, which is the mines that were right next to a power station, which meant that they produced the cheapest coal in the country, and they seemed to deliberately stop investing in those mines. Which allowed other players, including the Gupta families, to enter that market. And that is what resulted in the coal price or coal costs over several years escalating at such a dramatic rate.
Now, I'm glad you brought that up because that's a counter to the allegations of favoritism of the Gupta families, that those type of contracts are transformational. They're moving away from evergreen contracts that white firms had with the utility. Was there empowerment and transformation with Eskom and these type of deals?
Yeah, look, I mean, you have to remember that even the traditional mining companies starting to engage in some serious empowerment transactions, and the one case that you're referring to there, Exxaro, was a very empowered company. You know, the black ownership was quite high. So that's the one thing to remember, is that there was empowerment happening already at the tied mine side of things. On the other side, these short-term contracts, yes, definitely there were a lot more new players coming onto the market, which was absolutely necessary because you know, they weren't the traditional mining companies with big capital bases. They were able to you know, have short-term contracts for smaller mines. So there was definitely empowerment happening. The problem is that when the actual rationale was not empowerment per se, and I consider this a kind of a Trojan horse. You know, in the similar way that Jacob Zuma used the developmental state as a Trojan horse to allow looting to happen. So it wasn't for empowerment really, but it was for cronies of, you know, senior Eskom managers and people who were connected to the president or the former president, Jacob Zuma, for them to get their hands on contracts. And also we have to bear in mind that these contracts were often at inflated prices. They were higher than they should have been, even for short-term contracts, and also the transport costs were inflated, and transport, of course, becomes a huge cost factor, much higher because you're having to truck the coal in from 30, 40, sometimes even more kilometers away, as opposed to just having a conveyor belt right next door.
Mm-hmm. With allegations and information like this that is coming out, specifically about Eskom, what, if anything, has been done to try and secure prosecutions or try and secure money to be returned to Eskom that may have been taken out the wrong way?
Well, look, since January, when a new board was appointed and an interim CEO, new interim CEO, Phakamani Hadebe, was appointed, and he was subsequently made the permanent CEO. But since January, there's been quite a lot of action to crack down on corruption at Eskom. There's been about 10 criminal cases opened, I think 5 of them involving senior executives. And there have been efforts at you know, recovering some of the money. The most publicized case would be the McKinsey case. McKinsey offered to return R1 billion that it was paid as a result of an unlawful contract. And now Eskom has said that it wants to institute legal action against Trillion, which received 600 million, the Gupta-linked consultancy firm, as part of the same deal with McKinsey. They were McKinsey's supplier development partners. So there have been efforts on that front to get the money returned. As far as the coal contracts are concerned, the inflated coal contracts, as well as contracts that were awarded to the former acting CEO, the family of former acting CEO Machela Koko from his own division. That was through a company called Impulse. 680 million rands worth of contracts went to his stepdaughter. I'm not sure if any efforts have been made to recover that money. I know that there has a criminal investigation is underway, and that, as far as I understand, is ongoing. So, you know, I don't know how far that's gone, but presumably at some point, if the criminal investigation is pursued, at some point there would also be civil proceedings to recover some of that money.
Investigative journalist Stephan Hofstatter, thanks so much for your time discussing his book License to Loot on Eskom with us.